A trade war ignites between two of the closest allies in the world, threatening jobs, prices, and the very fabric of their economies. Canada, often seen as the polite neighbor, has drawn a line in the sand against the United States' aggressive tariffs. This is a story of defiance, strategy, and a nation standing up for its people. To see more gripping content like this, smash the like button and subscribe. In early 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump unleashed a trade war that sent shockwaves across North America. On February 1st, he slapped a 25% tariff on nearly all Canadian goods entering the U.S., alongside 25% tariffs on Mexican goods and 10% on Chinese products. The White House justified this move by claiming Canada wasn't doing enough to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants across the border. But the numbers tell a different story. Only 19.5 kilograms of fentanyl were seized at the U.S.-Canada border last year, compared to 9,570 kilograms at the U.S.-Mexico border. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called these tariffs unjustified and a direct attack on a long-standing ally. These tariffs hit Canada hard, with 73% of its exports going to the U.S. Canada's economy faced the threat of massive job losses and higher prices. Economists warned of a looming recession if the tariffs persisted. Industries like steel, aluminum, lumber, and autos were particularly vulnerable, as American importers would either pass on the 25% cost to consumers or drop Canadian products entirely. The stakes were high, and Canada had to act fast. Canada didn't sit idly by. On February 1st, 2025, Trudeau announced a fierce counterstrike: 25% retaliatory tariffs on $155 billion worth of U.S. goods. The plan was to start with $30 billion in tariffs immediately, targeting products like wine, bourbon, fruits, vegetables, and clothing. 3 weeks later, an additional $125 billion in tariffs would hit American goods, including electric vehicles, steel, aluminum, beef, pork, dairy, and trucks. Trudeau made it clear, "We don't want to be here. We didn't ask for this, but we will not back down in standing up for Canadians." This wasn't just about economics, it was personal. Trudeau urged Canadians to rally together, check labels at supermarkets, and choose Canadian products over American ones. He suggested swapping Kentucky bourbon for Canadian rye and skipping Florida orange juice. Ontario Premier Doug Ford took it further, threatening to cut off electricity exports to 1.5 million American homes in states like Michigan and New York. This was Canada saying, "If you hit us, we hit back harder." The government also worked with provinces, territories, and industries to minimize the impact on Canadian businesses. A remission process was set up to offer relief to companies hurt by the retaliatory tariffs. Canada's message was clear. It would protect its workers, its economy, and its sovereignty at all costs. Canadians didn't just leave it to the government. They took matters into their own hands. Across the country, a grassroots boycott of American goods and travel gained momentum. Supermarkets label Canadian products to make it easier for shoppers to choose local products. In Toronto, the Madison Avenue pub removed all American items from its menu, switching to Canadian or non-US ingredients for everything from nachos to beer. Manager Leah Russell told the BBC, "We're proud to support local businesses. This boycott is set in stone." The Liquor Control Board of Ontario stopped stocking US-made alcohol, like Kentucky bourbon. Canadians canceled trips to the US, which had been their top travel destination, pouring $20.5 billion into American tourism in 2024 alone. One woman from British Columbia, living just 10 minutes from the border, joined a Facebook group with 1.2 million members promoting by Canadian campaigns. Businesses, from pubs to construction firms, braced for tough times but doubled down on their commitment to local products. This public defiance wasn't just about economics, it was about pride. Canadians felt betrayed by a neighbor they'd considered a close friend for over a century. The US and Canada had fought wars together, shared the world's longest undefended border, and collaborated on Arctic security. Trump's suggestion that Canada could become the 51st state stung deeply, with Trudeau warning it was a ploy to weaken Canada's economy for annexation. Canada didn't stop at tariffs, and boycotts got creative. In March 2025, the government launched a bold anti-tariff billboard campaign in 12 Republican-leaning U.S. states and Washington. Messages like, "Tariffs are a tax on your grocery bill," and "Tariffs are a tax at the gas pump" popped up in places like Florida and Arizona. The campaign went viral, with American media outlets covering it, and one Reddit post about a billboard in Arizona racking up 13,000 upvotes. While some Americans, like economics professor Tom Smith in Atlanta, found the message compelling, others noted glitches, like a billboard in Georgia displaying French text, which confused locals. Canada also challenged the U.S. tariffs under the World Trade Organization and the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. The government worked tirelessly to negotiate with U.S. officials, with Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly and Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc in constant contact with their counterparts. Ontario Premier Doug Ford even traveled to Washington to meet U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, securing a temporary pause on some tariffs in exchange for suspending Ontario's electricity surcharge. Globally, Canada wasn't alone. The European Union retaliated with 26 billion euros in tariffs on U.S. goods, targeting beef, motorcycles, and whiskey. China imposed its own countermeasures, and even close U.S. allies like Britain and Australia criticized the tariffs. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called tariffs bad for business and worse for consumers. This global pushback showed that Trump's trade war wasn't just a Canadian problem, it was a worldwide issue. The tariffs took a heavy toll on both sides of the border. In Canada, officials predicted up to 1 million job losses if the 25% tariffs continued. Sectors like construction, auto manufacturing, and agriculture faced chaos. A landscaping business owner in Calgary said he might have to lay off workers and shut down early due to reduced consumer spending. An architectural firm in Ontario warned that tariffs on steel, wood, and aluminum would slow construction projects, leading to layoffs. In the U.S., American consumers faced higher prices for groceries, gas, and cars. The auto industry, deeply integrated across North America, risked shutting down within weeks, as predicted by Flavio Volpe of Canada's Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. General Motors announced temporary production increases in Indiana, but the broader industry braced for pain. U.S. stocks plummeted, with the S&P 500 dropping 17% since mid-February 2025, wiping out $104,000 from the average American retirement account, according to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Global markets felt the ripple effects. Japan's Nikkei index fell over 2%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng dropped 1.5%. J.P. Morgan's chief economist warned of a 40% chance of a U.S. recession in 2025, with lasting damage to America's reputation as a reliable trading partner. The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta projected a 2.8% U.S. GDP contraction in the first quarter of 2025, a stark reversal from earlier growth estimates. Trump's tariff policy was anything but consistent. On March 4, 2025, the tariffs took effect after a 30-day pause, but just days later, Trump announced a one-month reprieve on some tariffs for Canada and Mexico, only to threaten new ones on lumber and dairy. He proposed a staggering 250% tariff on Canadian dairy, citing Canada's high tariffs on U.S. milk, up to 241% after a quota. This flip-flopping caused whiplash for businesses and investors, with stocks swinging wildly after each announcement. Canada, however, stayed firm. When Trump imposed universal steel and aluminum tariffs in March, Canada hit back with $21 billion in retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, targeting steel, aluminum, computers, and sports equipment. Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney, who took over from Trudeau, vowed to keep tariffs in place until the U.S. showed respect for Canadian sovereignty. Carney, a former central bank governor, positioned himself as a crisis manager, ready to fight for Canada's economy. By April 2025, Trump spared Canada from his latest round of reciprocal tariffs on over 180 countries. But the existing 25% tariffs on autos, steel, and aluminum remained. Carney warned that more U.S. tariffs could target pharmaceuticals, lumber, and semiconductors, affecting millions of Canadians. He pledged to act with purpose and with force, keeping Canada's countermeasures ready. Canada's response to the U.S. tariffs wasn't just about policy. It was a moment of national unity. Polls showed a surge in Canadian pride, with citizens rallying behind a Canada First movement. New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt spoke of the unnecessary stress and pain caused by the tariffs, but reaffirmed her province's boycott of U.S. goods, even grounding 10 Tesla vehicles owned by the government. Social media buzzed with campaigns to buy Canadian, and businesses adapted by sourcing local or non-U.S. materials. This unity extended to Canada's leaders. From Trudeau's fiery speeches to Carney's calculated resolve, the message was consistent. Canada would not be bullied. The country's history of standing by its allies, whether providing refuge during 9/11 or fighting alongside the U.S. in wars, was a point of pride. Trump's tariffs felt like a betrayal, but they also galvanized Canadians to protect their economy and identity. As of April 15, 2025, the trade war shows no signs of slowing down. Canada's retaliatory tariffs remain in place, and the government is prepared to escalate with non-tariff measures if needed. The auto sector, a cornerstone of Canada's economy, faces ongoing disruption, with 25% tariffs on vehicles and parts threatening jobs and production. Global trade tensions continue to rattle markets, and economists warn of long-term damage to both the U.S. and Canadian economies. Yet Canada's bold stand has resonated. Its billboards in the U.S., grassroots boycotts, and strategic tariffs have shown the world it's not a pushover. The country is fighting not just for its economy, but for its sovereignty and dignity. Whether through negotiations or continued countermeasures, Canada is ready to face whatever comes next. Thanks for watching. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe for more engaging content. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Canada should navigate this trade war? Let's keep the conversation going.